All right, I will say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors, our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Teves, to thank the entire Shiur for dedicating the Shiurim this month in memory of Mr. Milton Marder, Mordechai Dovid and Rephael HaKohen, to thank the Elbaum family for dedicating all the Shiurim this month in commemoration of the yahrzeit of Gerald Elbaum, Yaakov Kopel, R Avraham Menachem, and to thank our Daf Yomi sponsor today, Lebovits, in memory of Tziporah Bas Meyer, Zichrona Livracha, on the occasion of her yahrzeit. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the neshamas will have an aliyah, and the families a neshama. So with that, let us begin. So today's daf is Pei Gimel 83. We are picking up a Meretz Hashem on Pei Be'amid Beis 82b, 2 lines up from the bottom. So the Gemara says, suppose just to reorient ourselves a little bit. We're dealing with a very interesting case of a person who takes a neder, nadra mishteki karos. Right? So just to reframe the case. So Rachel is married to Reuven. Rachel takes a neder. Her neder is that she's going to abstain from eating 2 loaves of bread. One of the loaves is made from fine flour. One of the loaves is made from inferior flour. Therefore, she really only has inui. She really only, quote unquote, has affliction from abstaining from eating one of the loaves and not from the other loaf. So what's the shaila? We know that a husband has the ability to annul his wife's vow when it comes to inui, right? Inui nefesh. So the shaila is, when he annuls her vow, does he just annul the vow for the one loaf for which there is inui, or does he annul the vow for both loaves, or does he have the ability? So also we had 2 different versions of this, but bottom line, Rabbi Yochanan was of the opinion that Allah only has the ability to annul the vow vis-a-vis one loaf, not the other. So the Gemara now is challenging this idea. Eisvei, so that's the Eisvei. I will say 2 lines up from the bottom. 82b, Pei Beis Amud Beis. So that's the Gemara. Eisvei, Gemara is Zekasha Haisha Shenadra Ben Nazir. So this is very interesting. So actually we're going to come to a couple of Nazir cases today, which in Meretz Hashem we're going to see in not so long in Maseches Nazir, which is just really interesting cases. So Eisvei Haisha Shenadra Ben Nazir, a woman who made a neder to become a Nazir. Only one problem. She wasn't very good at keeping her promises. So what happens? She makes an neder to become a Nazir, and what happens? She's drinking wine and going to levayas like no one's business. Okay? Small problem. So we'll say, so top of Pei Gimel. So what's talacha? Harezeh sofegis is harboim. Okay? So let's say, salacha lemaisa, you take an neder in Nazirus, and then you violate it. Guess what? You get malchus. You get malchus, right? In addition to other carbonic ramifications, but lemaisa, you get malchus. So hefer la baila, so that's very interesting. What happens if her husband annulled the vow? V'hi lo yada shehefer la. So Rabbi said, this is a very interesting case. So now what happens? So her husband annuls the vow. Now remember, he has the right to annul the vow because he has the right to annul the Nazirus. Now, she has no idea that he annulled the vow. Right? She has no idea. V'hi lo yada shehefer la. So she has no idea that he annulled the vow. So meanwhile, what is she doing? She's continuing to drink wine, continuing to go to levayas. Now we'll say, now why is she doing this? Why is she doing this? Intentionally. Now, why she's doing it intentionally, I don't know. That doesn't matter. The point over here is, she thinks that she's violating her neder nazirus. Meanwhile, her husband has already annulled her neder nazirus. So what's the halacha? Eino sofeges es haraboim. So she does not get malchus. She does not get malchus. Good. So both say, so this is just stam adin in Nazirus. So again, Rachel made the neder in Nazirus. Meanwhile, right after she made it, she already starts violating it. She's drinking wine. She's going to levayas. She gets malchus. Her husband hears about the neder. He annuls it. She has no idea about the annulment. She's continuing her erroneous behavior. Okay, so whatever. So halacha l'maisa, she doesn't get malchus. Why doesn't she get malchus? Why not? She's not Nazira anymore. Fine. So that's the case. That's the case. What does this have to do with us? V'i amrit mefer lemisana ve'i mefer l'sheina misana. So now the Gemara says like this, Rabbi Yochanan, if you're right, I will say, Rabbi Yochanan's whole model is that if you have a neder that has 2 components in it, one component that has inui nefesh, or I should say, has 2 components, 2 parts. One part that has inui nefesh, and one part that's not inui nefesh. And now Rabbi Yochanan says, in that neder, a husband annuls the inui nefesh part, but doesn't touch the non-inui nefesh part. So if you say that, vi amrit mefer lemisana ve'i mefer l'shem misana. So if you say that a husband has the ability to annul the inui part of the neder and not annul the non-inui part of the neder, maybe Dilma min yayin de isla tzara heferla min chartzon min zag lo heferla. It will say maybe when the husband annulled his wife's neder naziros, he only annulled the wine consumption part, right? The wine consumption part, and maybe he did not annul the prohibition to eat grape seeds or grape skins. We'll see this in Nazir, but part of the neder naziros is not only can you not drink wine, but you also can't eat grapes or grape products. So maybe when the husband annulled his wife's neder naziros, the only thing he annulled was the inui component. What's the inui component? That she can't drink wine. That's inui. But maybe he didn't annul the grape skin and grape seed prohibition, and that's still intact. That still remains. In other words, who's to say that he annuls the whole neder naziros? To which the Gemara says, "Daha lo isle tzara," because we'll say b'pashtos, there's no inui involved in not eating grape seeds or not going at eating grape skins, and therefore again, v'tisbog eshar boim, let her go ahead and get malchus in the event. So we'll say, so now what the Gemara is suggesting is like this: Rabbi Yochanan, if you're right that when a husband annuls a neder and there is an inui component and a non-inui component, that he annuls the inui component and leaves intact the non-inui component, maybe when he's annulling his wife's neder naziros, he annuls the wine component because that's inui, but leaves intact the grape skin or grape seed component, and therefore she should be chayiv or chayeves if she consumes grape skins or grape seeds. V'tizvach eshar boim. She wants a good kasha. So Rav Yosef says, no. Ein naziros lechatzoin. I will say, there's no such thing as partial naziros. Now, what does that mean? Take a look at the Ran for just a moment. So the Ran says, left-hand side, Am Rav Yosef, ein naziros lechatzoin. The Ran says, Decheivan, de lo mishkachas naziros shelo yochol al zag v'chartzon. Ki amar rachmani yifreno, demashma kule al korchech afilu al zag v'chartzon kamar. So I will say, so this is very interesting. In other words, that the same way that when a person takes a neder naziros, that's what that's the chevdol mishkachas nazir shelo yochol afal zag. Let's say a person says, I'm going to become a nazir, except I'm not accepting the prohibition to eat grape seeds and grape skins. Does such a neder naziros work? No. In other words, you're either a nazir or you're not a nazir. So the same way that the neder naziros itself cannot be chal lechatzon, there's no such thing as a partial neder naziros. So too the Gemara wants to suggest that the revocation of naziros is going to be the same thing. The same thing. Either it is revoked or it's not revoked. Right? Either it is revoked or it's not revoked. I'm sorry? Full commitment. So I'll say, again, when we get to Nazir, we're going to see this. That's part of the whole chap of Naziros. Ultimately, again, is either you're in or you're out. Either in or you're out. Okay, good. So the point over here is the Gemara is suggesting you can't bring a raya from Naziros because halacha l'maisa, either Naziros is all in or it's all in. It's all in. Good. Ein Naziros l'chatzon. So the Gemara makes an interesting observation based on this. Omrei Abaye. So Abaye says, well, okay, so it sounds like I will say, the only thing for which there must be full commitment is the actual neder naziros itself. Omrei Abaye hakarban chalachatzi naziros ika. They both say this sounds like that you're saying the neder itself must be complete, but it sounds like what you're inferring is that when it comes to the karbanos brought at the conclusion of neder naziros, maybe there is such a thing as the obligation to bring only some of the karbanos. Now we're going to see that when a person finishes a neder naziros, a person has to bring a chatos, an olah, and the shlamim. So the Gemara says, so just to understand the inference, the Gemara says, ein naziros l'chatzoin, which means, the Gemara is understanding to mean, when it comes to a neder naziros, there's no such thing as a partial neder. In other words, if you take a neder naziros, what does that encompass? All aspects of naziros. So the Gemara is inferring from that, but it sounds like vaha karban l'chatzi naziros. maybe there is carbonic obligation even for a partial Nazirus duration, or there is partial carbonic obligation. Take a look at the Ran again. The Ran says, Amar Abaye, ha carbon lechatz Nazirus ika, bitmiya. I will say this is a surprising statement. So we'll say, since the Lashon of the Gemara was, there is no partial Nazirus, v'lo ka'amar, ein chatzain b'Nazirus. So we'll say, this is so fascinating. The Gemara could have said, ein chatzain b'Nazirus. I will say, what does ein chatzain b'Nazirus means? There's nothing partial in Nazirus, which would then tell me what? What would that tell me? Mashma, the b'Nazirus atzmo hu deleka chatzain. So we'll say, so here's what's interesting. If it would have, let me say the outside for a second. If it would have said in chatzoin b'Nazirus, I would have said the concept of Nazirus is an all or nothing proposition. That's true in the Neder, that's true in the Karbanos. You're either all in or not in at all. The fact that it used the lashon of ein Nazirus l'chatzoin sounds like the Neder Nazirus itself must be absolutely complete. But maybe other components of Nazirus, i.e. the carbonic aspects, can be performed in a partial fashion. That's the inference the Gemara is making over here. Mashma, the Nazirus asma hu deleka chatzoin. In the Neder itself, it sounds like there's no partiality in it, right? Hayish carbon lechatzi chaziros. But maybe there is a carbon even for a partial Nazirus. How so? This is actually very interesting. Kigon shenadra Omansa tesvav yom. We'll say, for example, let's say when we took an Nazirus, she observed 15 days as a Nazira, v'hafar la baila, and now what happened? Then her husband annulled the neder. V'nimtza mevatel tesvav yom habaim aval tesa yom shemansa kvar lo ne'ekru t'chamla meparak mishama harini nazir debal megas gayis. So I will say, this is absolutely fascinating. There's a lot of stuff happening over here. I will say, one of the things we're going to see is like this. When a husband annuls his wife in neder. So remember again, let's take a step back. What's the window for a husband annulling his wife's neder? What's the window? 1 day. But the 1 day is when does it start? When he hears. So we'll say, you could have the following situation. Let's say a woman became, right, Rachel took a neder Nazirus. And what happens? She goes ahead and she doesn't tell her husband. Right, so he has no idea. So for 2 weeks, Stam Neder Nazirus, we're going to see, unqualified Neder Nazirus goes for 30 days. So what we're going to see is like this. So now let's say she doesn't tell her husband. Right, so she's not drinking wine. He asks her, why aren't you drinking wine? What does she say? Carbs, right? So fine, so she doesn't say anything. 2 weeks later, he finds out that she made a Neder Nazirus. So now, on the day that he hears, how long does he have? 1 day. What kind of day? Calendar day. Excellent. Now we'll say what happens? He's mevatel. He's made for it. He knows the neder. Then we'll say, here's what's interesting. So one of the things we're going to see, I will say, is the halacha is, and this the Rambam himself was a little bit ambiguous on this point. When a husband is made for his wife's neder, it's not retroactive. What that does is it shuts the neder. Now, again, generally, the way these things work is when is a husband hearing about it? When do we assume a husband is hearing about his wife's neder? When she makes it. So, generally, the way Hafara works is it shuts it down before it gets out of the gate. That's usually how it works. But you could have these cases where he doesn't know about the neder until sometime after it's been made. So imagine a case where she took on a neder Nazirus. He doesn't know about it for 2 weeks. For 2 weeks, she's been a Nazira. Now he hears about it, and now he shuts it down. They both say it's not retroactive. So therefore, what's occurred over here? So she now has 2 weeks of Neder Naziros. So we'll say, now what's the shaila? Does she have to bring some type of carbon now with the conclusion of her Neder Naziros? Now again, her conclusion is as a result of her husband's annulment. Right, but I just want to point out this is really fascinating. As opposed to HaTorah, which has the ability to be retroactive. Right, HaTorah does have the ability to be retroactive. Hafara is not retroactive. Hafara shuts it down. I will say that's why, by the way, That's why in the previous case, let's tie this all together for just a moment. In the previous case, Rachel made neder naziros. So what happens? She makes neder naziros. She's drinking wine, going to every levaya, right? She's on Levinson's website every single morning, looking to see what levaya she can go to today. She'll say, "What's the halacha? What's the halacha?" She's chayeves, or she gets malchus every time. When her husband shuts that neder down, so from this point going forward, so remember again, that does not retroactively free her from any liability in the past. So she's liable for everything she's done up until the moment of annulment. Going forward now, the neder is done. So we'll say, now here's the interesting shayla. 2 weeks in, he's made for the neder. So now what's the shayla? Does she have to bring some type of karban or some karbanos to mark the end of her neder naziros? To which the Gemara says, El Amar Abaye, ein naziros l'chatzoin, ve'ein karban l'chatzoin. So Abaye says, no. Just like I will say, there's no partial nedarim by nazir. In other words, just like by neder naziros. If you take a neder naziros, that's an all-in neder. There's no such thing as saying, I'm going to be a nazir, except I'm going to be tamei l'mesim. Or I'm going to be a nazir, except I'm going to eat grape seeds and grape skins. You can't do that. If you take an neder naziros, it's all-encompassing. So to Abaye says, when it comes to karbanos, there's no karban l'chatz naziros also. The only time you bring a karban abosai is at the conclusion of a complete neder naziros. Now, the truth is, there's an exception to that. The exception to that is if a person's, we're going to see this all Maseches Nazir, if a person is a nazir and they become tamei, right, accidentally, right? So then again, there is a carbonic process for that because the karban nazir starts up. What Abaye means is, if a husband shuts down, if he's made for the neder naziros, that's it. It's done. And there is no karban for that partial naziros process. Incredible. Allah of Gemara says, Meisi Gemara is the kasha. So I just want to point out, we're still on our original question. That's our original question. Rabbi Yochanan. What did Rabbi Yochanan say? Rabbi Yochanan said when a woman made a neder that encompassed 2 loaves, one was inui, one was not inui, what does the husband do? He's made for the inui part, and what? Doesn't touch the non-inui part. So this is an interesting chiddush. So we're trying to question that. So we have not successfully refuted Rabbi Yochanan yet. So basically, Gemara is another kasha. Rabbi say, but we are picking up along the way are some really fascinating halachos concerning nazir. So here's what we have. Number 1, ein naziros l'chatzoin. If you take a neder naziros, all in. Number 2, ein karban l'chatzoin. Right, that ultimately, again, if a husband is made, I should say number 2 really is that when a husband is made for his wife's neder, he shuts it down, but it's not retroactive. Number 3, therefore, when a husband is made for his wife's neder naziros and it brings it to a close, there are no karbanos that she brings to mark the end of that neder naziros. Good. So Meisi Meyer has the kasha. So Aisha shenadra benazir. It's an interesting case. So let's say a woman made a neder naziros. Same case. Rachel's married to Ruvain. She makes a neder naziros. Ve'afrisha behemta. Rabbi say in this case she has separated out her animals in order to go ahead and offer up her karbanos at the end of her neder naziros. Ve'achar kach hefer labayla, and now her husband went ahead and annulled the neder. Okay, so what's the halacha? So what's I say here? Rachel made her neder naziros. Again, she hasn't flagrantly violated right now the previous case. She separated out her animals, her karbanos, that she's going to bring at the conclusion of her neder naziros. Husband hears about the neder naziros, annuls the neder naziros. What's the halacha? Mevia chata sa'of ve'ena mevia ola sa'of. So she brings her chata sa'of, but she brings her chatas, but doesn't bring her ola and her shlamim. So both say, so pretty amazing. Vi amrit in karban lachati naziros. Now the Gemara is asking both say, well, 1 second, what did you just say? We just said that there's no karban for chati naziros. We just said before that in a case where the husband annuls her neder naziros and shuts down that process, there is no karban. There is no karban. So what do you mean she's bringing her chata sa'of? What is going on over here? To which the Gemara says, Amai mevia chata sa'of ve'elamai. So what are you forced to say? Yesh karban lachati naziros. It must be that what? There is a karban that's brought for a partial naziros. But if that's the case, that there's a karban that's brought, shalosh behemos ba'ilasuye, chatas, ola, and shlamim. Shabbos say, if that's the case, that there are karbanos that are brought for a partial naziros, then what? Bring all of the karbanos. Why are you telling me that for a partial nazir she's only bringing chatas ha'of? So we'll say this is really interesting. Ella the olam ein carbon lachatzi naziros. You're right. In reality, there is no carbon that is brought for a partial nazir. So in other words, say carbon is only karbanos, the chatas, the olam, and the shlamim are only brought at the natural conclusion of a neder naziros. So what's going on over here? Where ultimately, again, we're saying that a woman is going to bring the chatas ha'of. The chatas ha'of in a situation where her husband annulled her neder naziros, to which the Gemara says, so Ella the olam ein carbon lachatzi naziros, the chatas ha'of demasya, mishum the chatas ha'of ba'al ha'safek. And I will say chatas ha'of is different, because in general, chatas ha'of could come even in a case of safek. Okay, what does this mean? So we'll say, let's see what the Gemara is saying and let's understand what it's actually trying to say. The Gemara is trying to suggest it as follows. So we're sticking to our guns, what we said before. Namely, we said before that ultimately, just like there's ein naziros lachatzayin, ein karba naziros lachatzayin. The only time you bring your karbanos for naziros is when? The only time you bring it is when? Natural conclusion. What are you bringing? Chatas ol shlamim. So we'll say this case is going to be a little bit different because over here she's set aside animals to bring at the conclusion of her neder naziros. The Gemara is going to suggest that if she set aside animals, we're going to allow her to bring her chatas ha'of, even though the husband annulled the neder naziros. Why? Because chatas ha'of is different. Why is chatas ha'of different? Because chatas ha'of itself is lenient in that it could be brought even in cases of safek. What's the case of safek? Rabbi say, take a quick look at the rush. So the rush in the right hand margin, 2, 4, 6 lines in. Ella, so the Gemara says, actually make it 8 lines in. Make it 8 lines in. So actually, Ella, 6 lines in. Ella ma yesh carbon achatzi naziros, gimel behemos by, actually make it 8 lines in. Right? The chatas ha'of the masim mishum the chatas ha'of ba'al ha'safek. So we'll say, what's the case of chatas ha'of al ha'safek? This is interesting. He says, bioladas she'pila, ve'eni odas ma'pila. So we'll see, here's the case. A woman gave birth, and a woman miscarried, and she does not know what she miscarried. Im neifel hipila, or as Rabbi say, did she miscarry something that has the form of a baby, or not? Or was it just a piece of flesh? Therefore, we'll say, what's the halacha? Chayev v'chayeves b'karban, o beruach hipila p'tura. So we'll say, without getting into all technicalities over here, if she miscarried a fetus, then ultimately she'll be chayeves a karban. If she miscarried just flesh, just some type of fleshy item, then l'maisa again, she's not going to be chayeves a karban. So the Gemara says, and what's the halacha? So mevia chatas of misafek lachshira bekadshim be'mechal. So we'll say in this case, she brings a chatas ha'of in order to allow her to eat consecrated items. So we'll say the point over is, what do you see? Chatas ha'of is brought even in cases of safek. So because that, I will say, not that this is a case of safek, but rather the Rush says, Hilchach, hachanami bekal chayvu lahavi chatas ha'of, lechatzi naziros, v'gambaya kapakav. So let's listen to this. So the idea over here is, in this case of partial naziros, we'll let her bring a chatas ha'of. That's what it is. And I will say, I just want to point out, seems to be dafka in a case where she already separated kabbalah. So we'll say that's why the case is a very unique case. We'll see in Maseches Nazir with the halacha l'maisa in this case. But the idea over here is this time in a case where she took an neder naziros, she already separated out her animals that she was going to bring as karbanos at the conclusion of her naziros. Husband was now mefer her neder naziros. She can't bring her olah, she can't bring her shlamim, but we will let her bring her chatas ha'of. Why? Because we'll say chatas ha'of can be brought even in a case of safek. What's the case of safek? This woman who miscarried doesn't know what she's miscarried. We allow her to bring a chatas ha'of in order to what? In order to become permitted to eat consecrated items out of safek. So we'll say, so the Rush says over here, when a person makes a neder, they also need kapara. Why do they need kapara? So the Rush over here quotes Rabbi Lazar HaKapar, who says that what? That a nazir, right, a person who goes ahead and makes an neder naziros is a chotei, is a sinner. Therefore, she also needs kapara. Therefore, we'll allow her to go ahead and bring the chatas ha'of. Beautiful. So we'll say, but again, to be clear, the principle we espoused before, namely, of ein carbon lachatzoin still applies. There is no partial offering up of karbanos. Incredible. So the Gemara says, Eis, the Gemara is the kasha. So we'll say, we're still on Rabbi Yochanan, right? And we still don't have resolution on Rabbi Yochanan. Say, Ha'isha shenadra benazir v'nitmeis. Listen to this. A woman who took a neder naziros. Right? A woman who took a neder naziros, and then she became tmeya. Va'achar, so we'll say, so again, Rachel's married to Reuven. She took a neder naziros. She became a tmeya. Then what happened? The achakach hefer la baila. We'll say, so now what happens? After she became tmeya, then her husband annulled the neder. Mevia chatas haof, ve'in mevia olas haof. So she brings a chatos, and she doesn't bring an olah. Vi amrit mefer limisana, ve'in mefer l'sheina misana. Now, if you see that's what? That a husband has the ability, for Yochanan, if you're correct, that partial annulment works. That when you have a neder composed of multiple parts, you could annul the part that is afflictive in nature, but not annul the part that's not afflictive in nature. Dilma, maybe when this husband annulled his wife's neder, maybe Dilma miyayin de isleit Sarah heferla mitumas meis de lesleit Sarah lo heferla. Maybe the husband only annulled his wife's neder. We'll say what? Vis-a-vis the part that has inui. What is inui over here? Abstaining from wine. What doesn't have inui? Not becoming tamemes. So maybe halacha l'maisa, he only went ahead and, it's very interesting, maybe he only went ahead and annulled the neder when it comes to wine consumption, but didn't annul the neder when it comes to being tamemes. Okay, so that's the shaila. So we'll say, this is incredible, to which the Gemara says, no, this is actually fascinating. We'll say, Pei Gimel base 83b, 3 lines in. We'll say, profound idea. Amri, tumas meis nami is leitzara. We'll say, it's not true. Abstaining from becoming tamei, right, essentially abstaining from going to levayas, also has tsar. How so? We'll say, it's incredible. D'chsiv v'chayitin el libo. Mushlam al writes in Koheles, that Tova lechas lebeis Evel, el beis Evel milechas lebeis Mishta. It is better to go to a house of mourning, to a funeral, than it is to go to a house of celebration. Ba'asheru sov kala adam, for this is the end of all man. V'chayitin el libo, and the living will take it to heart. What does it mean the living will take it to heart, says the Gemara? V'tanya, Meyer says, what does it mean the living will take it to heart? The yispeid, yispedun. If you eulogize other people, they will eulogize liyu. The yifkun. If you cry for other people, they will cry for you. The yikbarude. If you bury other people, they will bury you. As Rabbi say, part of the power, the chayitin alibo, the Meyer suggests the chayitin alibo means that halacha l'maisa, if you're there for others at their time of death, then what? The community will be there for you at your time of death. Therefore, the inability to go to a levaya, listen to this, is actually a form of tsar. Is actually a form of inui nefesh. Why? Because your inability to participate in the tzara of others potentially does what? Precludes the community from being there for you during your time of tzara. So therefore, again, the Gemara suggests the inability to go ahead and become tamei actually is a form of inui nefesh. And therefore, halacha l'maisa, when a husband goes ahead and annuls his wife's neder naziros, ultimately there's tsar, not just in yayin, but there's tsar. So we'll say, a very profound yisod. Just we've seen this concept, or we saw this concept in Ksuvas as well, this idea of v'hachai yitin alibo. So we'll say, just you should know, the pash, what's the pash of pshat v'hachai yitin alibo? The pash of pshat v'hachai yitin alibo will take it to heart, as we'll say, the most profound part of going to a levaya, Shalom Alech says, is it forces you to contemplate your own mortality. In other words, we go through life never thinking about mortality. We go through life thinking that life is an infinite renewable resource, not realizing that one day we die. The power of going to a levaya is it forces us to face our own mortality. And I will say there is nothing more profound and nothing more powerful and nothing that gets me to do the things I need to do, like coming face to face with mortality. Not knowing how long I have in this world, by definition, pushes me to accomplish whatever it is that I need to accomplish. Incredibly profound. And I will say, here's what's interesting. So Rabbi Meyer has a different idea. Rabbi Meyer says, Hachayitin alibo means It reminds me, I have to go to someone's levaya because I want people to come to my levaya. I have to mourn for others because I want others to mourn for me. I have to pick up that shovel and help in the kvura because I want others to bury me. So say, listen to this. The Imre Emes, the Gerald Elbaum says, but one second. Here's what's ironic about this. Here's what's troubling about this. They say the concept of going to a levaya and participating in kvura is called what? Chesed shel emes. Why is it called chesed shel emes? Because at the end of the day, there's no hope for reciprocity. The dead can't reciprocate. But yet here, the whole chap that Rabbi Meyer is saying is what Rabbi say? Reciprocity. Why do I go to a levaya? I want other people to come to my levaya. Why do I cry? Why do I eulogize? I want other people to eulogize me. Why do I engage? Why do I help in the burial? I want other people to bury me. So a second, this is not a chesed shel emes. Then I'm doing, it's true, the person who's dead can't do anything back for me, but Rabbi Meir is not focused on the dead. Rabbi Meir is focused on the communal dynamic. So this is not a chesed shel emes. So Rabbi said, listen to what the Imre Emes says. This is incredible. The Imre Emes quotes the Drisha, who says in Yardei, listen to this, that what does it mean, hachai yitin el libo, that the living will take it to heart? What does that mean? He says, shagam hu yamos, v'gam also yispedu, v'ayidei zeh yaset tshuva. Im kain ein zetashlum. So the Drisha says you're reading it wrong. You're reading it wrong. What does it mean? When Rabbi Meir says v'chayitin, listen to this. V'chayitin libo, what does it mean? The yispod yispedun. What it means is like this. The same way I'm eulogizing this person, one day someone's going to eulogize me. The yifkun. The same way I'm crying for this person, one day someone's going to cry for me. The yikbar, the same way I'm burying this person, one day people are going to bury me. It's not a reciprocity thing. What is it? It's a contemplation of mortality thing, like we just said before. What it means is, when I go to a levaya and I do these things, I'm struck by this reality that one day it's going to be me. One day it's going to be me. And if one day it's going to be me, I both say, what does that mean? What does that create? For me, it creates an urgency to do tshuva. To do tshuva. And I will say, there's no time to spare. There's no time to wait. If there are things that are broken in my life, which all of us have things that are broken in our lives, the day and the time to get it together and to begin, at least to begin the process of repairing it, is now. Is now. For I know not how much time I have in this world. See, the Imre Emes says, you're reading it wrong. You're reading it as reciprocity, right? That Rabbi Meir is saying, "V'chayitin el libo," you should eulogize because you want someone to eulogize you. Cry, or because you want someone to cry for you. Bury, because you want someone to bury you. No, it's not a reciprocity thing. It's a reality thing. That when I go, I always say, no. Doesn't everyone have this thought when you come to a levaya? Doesn't everyone ever? We learned this in the Piagetz also. In Bnei Machshava Tova, we learned this concept. You go to a levaya, just to be graphic, you go to a levaya, you see the aron, you see the casket, and what goes through your mind? One day that's me. One day that's me. One day my guf is going to be in that casket. It's going to be me. I hope it's not for many, many years from now. But the truth is, I have no idea. And when the children are getting up to give a hesped, one day that's going to be my children. And when they're lining up and passing the shovel or putting the shovel, one day that's going to be my levaya. Says the Imre Emes, it's not for reciprocity purposes, but it's for tshuva purposes. V'achai yiten el libo. When you realize with complete clarity that one day that's me, so suddenly what does that spark? Tshuva. The day to get my life in order, the time to get my life in order is now. The time to fix those things that are in a state of disrepair is now. For there is no time to waste, for I know not how much time I have in this world. So it's not amanas l'kabel schar. It's not reciprocity. The whole thing is a process to spark dynamic, personalistic tshuva. I will say incredible. Okay, so let's just tie up our loose ends. So I will say, how do we paskin in the case of the shtei kikaros? So I will say, in the case of the two loaves, how do we paskin? Namely, again, if you have two loaves, right? The wife made a neder, right? Rachel made a neder, not to eat two loaves. One of them has inui, one of them doesn't have inui. So the Rambam writes in Hilchos Dar Parak Yud Beis Halacha Vav, Nadra mishtei kikaros, ba'achas yesh la inui, uba'achas ein la inui, Mefer lezush shemis'anabeh, The Eino made for the Zushin and Elaine Leino. So we'll say the Rambam Paskins like Rabbi Yochanan. Like Rabbi Yochanan. Namely, I will say in this case where she made a neder on 2 loaves, so Allah say he has the power of annulment. He has the power of annulment over the one that has Inui Nefesh and does not have the power of annulment over the one that does not have Inui Nefesh, which I will say makes sense because his power of annulment is not blanket, right? It doesn't apply to anything. So I will say, so remember again, as much as a chacham, see here's what he will say, another distinction between hatara and hafara. If you remember again, by hataras nedarim, there's no such thing as partial revocation. Right? If a chacham annuls the neder, he annuls it in its entirety, he revokes it in its entirety. By hafara, by annulment, interestingly enough, there is partial hafara. Namely, that if she makes a neder on 2 loaves, but only one of them ultimately has inui, he only annuls the part of the neder that has inui, the other part remains intact. Incredible. Shabbos say, so again, fine, good. We saw the neder in Nazir's cases, good, let's go weiter. So I'll say, now let's go. Alright, says the Mishnah. We'll say another very interesting case here. Mishnah says as follows, Konam, Sheni Nana Labriya. So we'll say, this is a fascinating case. So now, here we go. Rachel says, now we'll say, if you take a quick look at the Ran, so the Ran is on the right-hand side. If you go like right across the Ran, about 8 lines down, where you see the Mishnah. Konam Sheni Nana Labrios. Here's the case. Masha'ani nenis min habrios yehei alai kikonam. So we'll say the case over here is as follows. The case is, Rachel says, I am not getting any hana from brios, from any people. So she's making a neder not to derive benefit from any other person. Okay? So konam she'eni nene lebrios. Good, she'nenis lebrios. So we'll say he doesn't have the ability to go ahead and be mefer. And I will say, now this is interesting, right? We'll see why this is in just a moment. So he does not have the ability to be mefer. And I will say, now another interesting halacha, but she does have the ability to go ahead and get benefit from leket, shichacha, and peah. I will say, remember again, leket, shichacha, and peah are agricultural tithes left for the poor. Right, so remember again, leket is dropping individual stalks, shikha, leaving behind a bundle, and peah is the corner of the field that has to be left unharvested for the poor. So we'll say, so again, so just follow the progression here. She's taking a neder not to get benefit from people, from anyone else, right? So husband, so that's part 1. Part 2, husband doesn't have the ability to annul that neder. Part 3, she has the ability to go ahead and get leket, shikha, and peah. Now we'll say, why does she have the ability to get leket, shikha, and peah if she made a neder not to get benefits from other people? So look at the Ran. This is actually fascinating. The Echolo lehanos leket, shikha, peah writes the Ran, the Chivon, the chsiv behu tazov yisera, v'lo ksiv behu nesina, les mutavas hanal lebailim, hilchach kishakla leket, shikha, peah, eino nenis mishal brio. So we'll say, well, we're going to see essentially something amazing. When a farmer leaves behind leket and shikha, or peah, leaves behind, designates peah. So I will say, essentially, what happens to that produce? It becomes hefker. It's actually interesting. So therefore, again, when Rachel, who made the neder not to benefit from people, comes and takes that leket, shikha, and peah, I will say, who is she taking it from? She's taking it from hefker. She's not taking it from the landowner. Right? That's why, again, even though she made a neder not to get benefit from any person, the taking of leket, shikha, and peah no way is contradicted by that neder, because halacha l'maisa, again, she's not taking it from a person, she's taking it from hefker. Incredible. Let's go weiter. Konam kohanim leviim nenimli. So this is an interesting case. Let's say she makes a neder. Kohanim and leviim cannot get any benefit from me. Now we'll say, so now what's the problem with that neder? She has truma and meiser. She has truma and meiser. So now she's making a neder that Kohanim and leviim can't get benefit from me. So yitlu al karcho. So they could take their portions even against her will. Right, so I'll say, if you look at the Rush, I'm sorry to make you go all over the place. If you look at the Rush, excuse me, in the left-hand column, the Rush, about 10 lines in, Kodam Kwanam Leviim Nanim Li Yitlu, Shumas and Maestros Al Karcho, Tetovas Hana Inamamo. So we'll say we're going to see, we'll explain all of this, But halacha l'maisa, Kohanim Levim could take their Trumas and Maisros even against her will. Interesting. Fine. However, if she says, Kohanim Elu, Levim Elu, Nedimli Yitlu Acherim. We'll say if in her nether she said, I hereby prohibit these Kohanim, she named certain Kohanim, or she named certain Levim from getting benefit from her. So in that case, Rabbi say those named Kohanim and Levim cannot get benefit, but other Kohanim and Levim can. Beautiful. Says the Gemara. So let's analyze this first. Just remember again, in the first part of the Mishnah, we have Rachel making a neder. And what's her neder? That no one, she is not permitted to get benefit from anyone. She's Lashon of Brios, right? I can't get benefit from any other person. So it says the Gemara, Il Alma, Efshar de Mitzna Midilei. Now I will say, here's interesting. What did the Mishnah say? Rachel makes a neder that she cannot get benefit from anyone. So what's the halacha? Her husband doesn't have the ability to annul that neder. Now I will say, the fact that her husband doesn't have the ability to annul that neder, what does that tell you? That her husband is not included in that neder, right? So he says, Alma Efshar de Misna Midilei. Ultimately, again, it's clear that she can still get benefit from her husband, right? Because remember, again, if it was a neder precluding her from getting a benefit from her husband, then what? Husband should have power of annulment over that. So the fact that the husband can't annul the neder would indicate to us that halacha l'maisa, ultimately, again, she is still permitted to get benefit from him, right? Michlal debal lav bichlal briosu, which I will say tells us that husband is not included in the category of brios, right? He's not included in brios. What does it mean not included in brios? That when she says, I'm not going to get hana from people, right? Her husband is not included in the category of people. Se'ema seifa, here's the problem. Look at the next part of the Mishnah. What does the Mishnah say? Yechola lehanos b'leket shichon peah. So it said, the next part of the Mishnah says that when she makes this neder, she does have the ability to go ahead and benefit from leket, shichacha, and peah. So we'll say, what can you infer from that? Aval midbal lo achla. So we'll say, that sounds like dafka from leket, shichacha, and peah, she can benefit, but from the husband, she can't benefit. So what we'll say, so the Gemara is pointing out over here seems to be contradictory inferences. From the first part of the Mishnah, we can seem to infer that what? She can benefit from the husband, right? Since the husband can't annul it. Because again, if she couldn't benefit from the husband will be able to annul it. The fact that the husband can't annul it seems to indicate that she could still benefit from the husband. But then it says, as a result of this neder, she can get leket shichan peah, which sounds like she can get leket shichan peah, but can't benefit from the husband. So what's going on over here? Alma bal bichlal briosu. Therefore, according to this interpretation, the husband would be included in brios, would be included in the statement of people. So which one is it? Rabbi says. So now we have three different interpretations. So watch, let's at least begin this today. Amra Ula says, Li'olam la bichlal briosu. In reality, when she makes a neder not to get benefit from brios, her husband is not included in that neder. Therefore, again, so we'll say, so that's why halacha l'maisa, he doesn't have the ability to annul this neder. Why? Because he really has nothing to do with him, right? It's not inui nefesh, and ultimately, again, it's not dvarim beino lebeina. Furthermore, we'll say also the only other reason he also can't annul the neder is why va'od ein yachal lahafer mipnei she'yachol lehanos b'leket shichan peah. We'll say furthermore, Ula says that even if he was included in this, which he's not, it's not like she's without recourse. Why? Because what could she always take? Leket shichan peah. So there's another form of benefit. There's another form of benefit for her. We'll say, take a look at the Rash for just a moment. Amar Ula, the olam lab bichlal briosu. He's perished the olam ba lab bichlal briosu. Husband is not included ultimately. And we're going to stop over here for today. We'll pick up at Meyer Hashem with these three interpretations tomorrow. It was three opposite inferences. It was what Meyer Hashem see tomorrow. Both say shkoyach. All right, Chav Zoom. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you, Zevin.
it's indeed reciprocal, like what you